Mainstream media was rejected by Lynne Findlay and her team. But guess who got the exclusive interview with the brand new BC Conservative leader? Nobody's getting an interview with Lynne Findlay. Check this out.
Other outlets have received similar letters or communications.
Yeah. And I would give her a fair interview, of course.
Yeah.
But I've continually asked, including yesterday. And so I think she needs to sort of come forward and say something or do something.
Well, no, I mean, it's up to her. She doesn't have to. I mean, there's no law that requires her to speak to the media.
Oh, that's true.
And that's her decision.
Yeah.
There are consequences for that, which means the public doesn't really get to know you or see you. And maybe that's a good thing for them. You know, maybe that's their strategy, is to not make her visible. But she is not really. She gave an interview to Black Press.
Yes, right.
Which is the only one I've seen of any.
Mainstream media is going to freak out when they see this interview. Why? Because it's raw, unfiltered truth. They don't want you to know the real Lynne Findlay. They don't want you to know the real plan for British Columbia. Prosperity and unity for all. And yes, she's the real deal. The left is terrified of her.
That the pro-Trump extreme right of the Conservative Party is firmly in control.
They tried with Pierre Poilievre, painting him as Trump Jr. They're doing the same with Lynne, but this is not going to work. After you see this exclusive interview, everybody in British Columbia is going to be voting for Lynne Findlay. You know what you represent? It's the voice of the people. That's why there's hope, and that's why I feel hope, because you represent us, the voice, not the establishment. It's so refreshing that we could actually have somebody that's fighting for us. They're attacking you. Like, mainstream media has focused their attention on you. You're not going to want to miss this exclusive interview. Joining us today is Lynne Findlay, the new leader of the BC Conservative Party, former federal cabinet minister, serving as Minister of National Revenue, where she won awards for slashing red tape, to making history as the Conservative Party's first female chief opposition whip. Lynne has been a strong voice in the Canadian politics, and during her tenure as whip, she kept caucus rock solid, leading her team with absolute discipline, and not a single floor crosser throughout her watch. I'm sure many people didn't know that. So I'm pleased to welcome the Honorable Lynne Findlay to the show.
It's great to see you again, Mark. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you because a lot has happened. You won as the BC Conservative leader, so congratulations. I do have to say that if you were still in Ottawa, I believe there would be zero floor crossers, and the Liberals would still have their minority and not majority government. In my opinion, that's my opinion. But we are so lucky to have you in British Columbia fighting for us. So everything happens for a reason. We're fine with you not being in Ottawa and here helping turn things around in British Columbia.
Well, thank you. And very capable people took over after me federally, including my deputy whip, who became the chief opposition whip. But, you know, there was a federal election loss, which a lot of people were very disappointed about. And maybe they weren't prepared to spend another several years in opposition. I don't know all their reasons. I do know them all. I have my own thoughts, but I'm proud of the fact that when it was my turn at the helm, that we stuck together, we were unified, and that sense of unity is what I am offering and bringing to the caucus of the Conservative Party of BC. I said, if I can keep together 3 times the size of caucus federally with some of the same divergence of opinions, I think we can do well here in my home province.
Yeah, so I just want to say, you know, when you won, I watched it live on TV.
Yeah.
I honestly had tears in my eyes. because for the first time in my life, and I was born in BC, I've lived in BC my entire life. For the first time in my life, I honestly felt hope.
That's lovely. I do thank you for that. It's certainly, I'm an optimist by nature. Some would say that probably is a little masochistic on my part sometimes, given my professions of both law and now politics. But I am an optimist by nature. So for me to bring a message of hope, opportunity, prosperity comes quite naturally to me, but also I believe that I have the skills to help make that happen. But it isn't just one person, as you know, not one person, not one team, not one party. It takes independent journalists like you. It takes a chorus of everyday folks who are working away and trying to make a living and want a better, more affordable life. It takes us all saying we've had enough of an NDP government that says they care but clearly does not through their policies, through their reckless spending of our money, to the point where we have 7 nursing, seniors care homes that have been shut down around the province. We have work being done on hospitals that is shut down. We just had another mill closure in Prince George that affects 300 direct jobs and hundreds of indirect jobs. This is not the way to proceed if you really want to do well by the citizens of our beautiful province. And that's my motivation. I want to create hope and opportunity.
Now you have all of the skill set. I mean, you could have retired. You have a career as a lawyer and in politics federally, and you decided instead of retirement, you looked at your grandchildren, if I'm not wrong, and you decided, hey, you know what? I need to do this for the people of British Columbia. And you actually converted me, because I was like, oh, who is this Lynne Findlay? And when you told me your story, I was like, man, it's the right time. It's the right amount of skill set. It's the full package. And we get to have you in British Columbia because British Columbia has had 5 credit downgrades in 5 years.
Yes.
We are running a $13.5 billion deficit spending each year with no plan on getting things in order. And 70,000 working age adults have flooded out of the province because they don't feel like hope has basically evaporated in this province. Yeah. So, I mean, this is your time, and we're excited to have you. So we're going to get into all sorts of questions that I have. And in this interview, I have some questions from my audience that they've left me to ask you. So that should be quite fun as well.
That's great.
So first of all, my first question, and I'm really interested, is after you won, did you sleep at night? That night?
That night, wow. I have to say, I had some sense when I was there that night how the votes would stack up. We were doing our own internal polling, and it stacked up the way I expected. But as it got through a couple of rounds, you start to not be sure because the pot is shrinking. You also don't really know where everyone's seconds and now even third and fourth votes are going. So I was surprised as anyone when they made the announcement. Of course, I was overjoyed for people who'd worked so hard. I mean, I truly had as I say, put together with toothpicks and chewing gum. I mean, we didn't have the money. We didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have the highly paid campaign managers and lobbyists. We were truly a grassroots, bit of a ragtag group, but we were very committed and we worked very hard. And I did get out around the whole province. I think eventually at the end of the day, I won 58 out of 93 ridings. And of course, it isn't just popular vote, which I won, not by that much, but it was widespread around the province, which made all the difference. And I was very heartened by that. And it meant that I had a really good mandate to go forward and show the people of British Columbia what we can do for them out of a heartfelt desire to give back opportunity. We have to stop seeing our best and brightest and our young people and those who have succeeded leave. And they are leaving. And they're leaving because, as beautiful as it is here, if you can't afford to live or you don't see a path to some building of assets or a brighter opportunity in future, you're not going to stay, or at least not in the numbers we need. So I have a completely different idea of what our future can look like, what it should look like, and I can't wait to get at it. Really, I've been working hard since day one.
Yeah, I kind of want to know what was going through your mind when you're like, I won. Did you even have a chance to celebrate, or like the day after you just decide, hey, it's time to get to work? Also, like, I mean, the story of you winning against the establishment, I don't know if you want to talk about that. I mean, other parties had millions of dollars towards their campaign, and it was just you and the grassroots and people. And that's, what you represent is the voice of the people. That's why there's hope. And that's why I feel hope, because you represent us, the voice, not the establishment. It's so refreshing that we could actually have somebody that's fighting for us.
I believe that in my core. I really do. I think that must have resonated with people. I used to, when I went around the province before I spoke, I'd say a little prayer and just say, let me resonate. Let people hear what they need to hear from what I have to say. As you know me well enough to know, I don't use scripts. I just talk from the heart. I talk about the big issues we all need to talk about. But I think people felt my sincerity, and like you said, I mean, we all have options and choices in life, but I felt that perhaps I had something to offer through my experience, which wasn't just about politics. It's my legal career. It is being a mother of 4 and a grandmother now. It is loving my province. It is wanting, what's the expression? Planting trees that I'll never sit under. I mean, you want to think that the people coming along now and after us will be able to stay here and enjoy it. I don't like the idea of the NDP turning basically our whole province into one big park and then deciding who can get in the park and who shouldn't, restricting access. And I don't believe in governing for a small percentage of the population. We need to pursue policies that benefit all British Columbians, that make all British Columbians feel welcome, and that attracts investment and attracts trade. And we need to get goods to market. We need to get rid of the economic vandalism that the NDP has done. We need to open up the north. There's going to be a pipeline, we're told, through a southern route. We're for pipelines. We agree with it. That's great. But you can't help but note that the northern route would have had half the cost, would have chewed up less farmland, and would have gone directly to Port of Prince Rupert and our ports to Asian markets. We're part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We are on the Pacific Rim. There is a market for what we have to offer, but not if we leave it in the ground. And that's what this NDP government ideologically has decided. And it is not bringing any kind of hope or prosperity to our own citizens.
Okay, you didn't answer my question. Did you party after that victory?
Oh,
but I also want to know.
I kind of lost that in the answer. What I was going to say is, because we didn't know and we didn't have much money, and every place was so expensive, we didn't book anything. We ended up down at the Weston Bay Shore and just went into the restaurant. But everyone kept pouring in to the point where I think the hotel was not happy with us. But we really didn't have a designated place to go. And it was joyous because people were just happy and coming in and wanted pictures and wanted to just, shake hands and congratulate each other and congratulate me. And one of my daughters and her boys came, and my husband was there, who's also an MLA, of course, and we were just enjoying the company. So we were up late. I think by the time I did head to bed, I pretty much probably passed out. But we were very excited, but a little shocked, maybe too. And then the next day, I started to work the next day. I had a first caucus meeting the next day. We met downtown because everyone was in town for the announcement, and everyone came. Everyone was being positive, which was wonderful. The caucus has been universally positive toward me. And I appreciate that because it's not easy. Leadership races are in family tensions, and people maybe wanted someone else, some of them. I did have the most MLAs endorse me, but still people are disappointed. I get that. It takes a little while. But the one thing I did on day one is I started meeting with every member of caucus individually, and I have done that. And I've also met with each of my candidate competitors one-on-one, and I've had a first caucus retreat. So I went to work right away, and that's always an exciting journey. I think it settled in over several days, though, that wow, not only did I win, I've got a big job to do, but it's one that I believe with clarity and focus, we can achieve it.
It was such an exciting day for British Columbia. Like I said, I was in tears. So I wanted to really hear about the celebration. I have a question. What did Pierre Poilievre have to say about it?
Congratulations. I don't, he didn't say a lot, but he certainly reached out. And I've met with him since, had lunch with him when he was out here. I also met with Stephen Harper when I was in Calgary, got some advices from him because, of course, he was my first prime minister. I served in his cabinet. And I really appreciate their friendship and advice. And we have a reality in BC that's a little different than other parts of Canada, especially with DRIPA and some of those issues. So we had a good talk about all of those things, and they're wishing us well. And I appreciate their friendship.
Yeah, because I really think that the blue wave starts in the west and it goes east. So your victory it represents to Canada is the start of something, in my opinion. And so that's why, if change is going to happen, we're going to change it right here in this province in British Columbia. And it's going to be contagious, go across the board. So there's a few things I want to talk about. You did mention DRIPA there. So I'd like to talk about that. I also want to talk about you formed something called the Western Alliance. David Eby has been blocking prosperity for the West. I mean, you have Saskatchewan and Alberta. They're like, let's do this. It's so embarrassing that Scott Moe and selling his potash through Washington. Like, it's just, yeah. I mean, the amount of blocking prosperity from British Columbia, it's refreshing to see that there's a plan so that the West could be prosperous. Before we talk about those two items, why don't we twin the TMX and also build the Northern Pipeline? I mean, right now, the way it is like 95% of all our products going down to the United States. If we want to be a strong sovereign nation, we need to act as if no oil goes down to the United States and we have options to sell all our oil to the world. Then we could get the top value and we're not subject to, the United States threats. We're a strong sovereign nation. We could sell our products, and it would make sense to have multiple pipelines to the BC coast, not just twinning the TMX, but also have other routes as well.
Well, you're absolutely right. And of course, sovereignty, the word you're using, is a very important word because with assertion of sovereignty comes freedom. With proper fiscal governance comes freedom. What I mean by that is you have opportunity, you have good jobs, you have the ability to grow and succeed, and therefore you have the freedom of options. Free people in a free country making free choices in free markets. This is really, really important to future prosperity. it begs the question, why would people go in the opposite direction? They have another agenda. They're serving another master. What is that? For me, I want to serve the people of British Columbia, and I want to serve my country. A prosperous BC means a prosperous Canada. Part of my Western Alliance concept is that if we start to move towards prosperity, if we build processing plants again, if we get refineries going again, if we have more control over our own products, take down interprovincial trade barriers with Alberta and Saskatchewan, perhaps the Yukon at least, we are creating something. And what we're creating is a powerhouse within our own nation. It means that right now, this NDP government, we're not taken seriously. We're not taken seriously by the rest of the country. We're not taken seriously by our southern neighbors because we are not pursuing prosperity for our own citizens, even though the elements we need to do so are literally at our fingertips. We have just as good intelligence here, innovation. We have entrepreneurial spirit, but it's being crushed by the NDP. They don't really want to unleash our resources. Obviously, they'd rather they stay in the ground, and they really don't make any secret about it. They don't understand entrepreneurship, the risk that is involved. I just talked to a couple of business people the other night, and they were saying the hours we put in to build something, the people we now employ, they discount it all. As soon as you have some success, they seem either jealous or suspicious of it. They don't value the time and the effort and the vision that goes into it. I want to turn that all around. I had one person say to me, well, you're talking about a lot of change. I said, I absolutely am. 180-degree change. We need to go in a completely different direction if we want to build a future that's meaningful. And I firmly believe in that. So if we are pursuing that, we are able to say to the other provinces that surround us, we want to be part of this. We want a seat at the table. And hey, Canada, when we're talking the federal government, and I'm the only leadership candidate that has any federal experience, and I've often said you don't need to have all the answers, but you need to know where to go to find the answers. We would be taken more seriously if on some of these we were in the same place, moving together with some rhythm. We would be listened to more in trade, in getting some more autonomy within our province. You know, Quebec demands greater autonomy in their taxation system, in their immigration system. Why couldn't we ask for this in the West? We just haven't. We don't. Well, I think that if we are an economic powerhouse for the nation, and we are taking our place proudly beside other Western provinces, that we will not be able to be denied. And I want to see that. The idea that you would call our 4 pillar industries sunset industries, which is what this NDP government does: fisheries, agriculture, mining, I'm missing one, forestry. These are not sunset industries unless you're setting about sunsetting them through your policies. And then if our policies are the opposite, where we want these things to flourish, where we want to get those good jobs back, they will come back. If you build it, they will come. You know, this is what you can do, but not with the NDP government. They have been given a decade of opportunities to do this, and they have failed. They're a failed party. And under the present Premier, David Eby, I mean, at least John Horgan, you have to say he had a surplus. But in the last 4 years alone, under this Premier, we've gone to $183 billion and growing in debt, the deficit you already mentioned, our downgrading of our credit. And their answer was, oh, look, we're out of money. So we'll close down all these services. We'll close down all this. and infrastructure and other things we desperately need. And we will up the tax rate on the lowest income tax bracket. That means everyone who pays taxes, whether you're really low income slipping down into low income or you're high income, you pay more in taxes. They expanded the PST to include 7% on shoe repair and yarn. In my meet and greets, I'd often say, any knitters in the crowd? And there's usually 2 or 3 who put up their hand. And I go, you knitters, you're a threat to us all. I mean, come on. Really? You're going to make someone who knits a sweater pay 7% more for their yarn? I mean, this is sad that you feel you have so mismanaged our finances that you need to reach into everyday life like that and take more away. It's terrible. They're incompetent. But it's more than that, because I think they've done it purposely.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, but there's a Canadian hero that a business owner. He's a winery from British Columbia that went on to CBC.
I did see it.
Yeah, so he came on. They thought that he was going to go on to bash Trump, so they gave him airtime, and then he basically exposed that we're paying 70% interprovincial trade on our wine, when so the US 50% is less than what we're charging in Canada. And it went super viral. And we need more business owners and people to come out and if you guys look him up, support the winery. This guy, to me, is a Canadian hero. We need more people to voice their opinions. But that's just an example. So I want to ask.
If I'm correct, Mark, he said the markup interprovincially was between 71 and 300%. So he said this 50% tariff is not even close to what we're dealing with interprovincially. And when I was Minister of National Revenue, you were also Minister over Excise Tax Act. And I changed the Excise Tax Act to allow people to even move a bottle of wine from one province to the other. And then it was up to the provinces to take it from there. But this is the sort of interprovincial trade barrier that is hurting us way more than American tariffs. I'm not saying they're good. We need to stand up against them. We need to negotiate on these fronts. But to use the kind of, it's laziness. This is governance laziness to say, oh, it's all the Americans, it's that president. Look internally. Look at what you can do in our own province that is within our sovereign ability to do it, and then get it done.
I completely agree with you. So I'd like to discuss, like, what is this Western Alliance? What does it look like? What is is there going to be some sharing of revenues? Like, how's this? What's the vision for this thing?
Well, of course, it isn't formalized yet. I need to win an election first. But as part of my optimistic outlook on the future, it is, and I have spoken briefly with the premiers of Alberta and Saskatchewan. It's about taking our place. And if we do, they are very excited at the opportunities that might exist along the lines I'm talking about. It could be it could be many things. It's multi-layered. I'd like to see a G7 rated highway that goes right through all the provinces to get our goods and services there. I'd like to see infrastructure upgrades. One of the very neglected areas by the NDP is our infrastructure. I went up to the Quesnel Bridge, which they sing songs about it falling down. I literally could put my hand through the rusted out metal of that bridge. It is scary. There are big trucks going over there. It's part of the Alaska Highway, as is the Taylor Bridge up near Fort St. John, which has been in need of repair for at least 2 decades or more. That Quesnel Bridge was built in 1961, and chunks of it are falling off. They're falling onto the rail lines below. If I were a truck driver, I would have real concerns about going over that bridge, and they do. This is unsafe. That's where our money should be going, and whether it's government money, intergovernmental cooperation in these areas, P2, P3 partnerships. We have to explore every and all opportunities to build the infrastructure we need. That's one place. Trade. Well, the whole issue on wine and alcohol is a good example, because there's many of us who like a glass of wine once in a while. Well, we used to call it the initiative. I think Dan Albus coined it, who's an MP in British Columbia, free my grapes. And literally it was a hashtag free my grapes, because it's about allowing free trade within our own country. And we don't do that. It has to do with credentials. If I'm a teacher in BC, it is very difficult for me to go to another province to be a teacher. I had a chartered accountant tell me the other day that he has a client who he's worked for 25 years open up a part of their business, or I think he bought a new business in Newfoundland, for instance, in this case, and he's not allowed to do his books because they say, well, you're not qualified in Newfoundland. He said, I've been a CA for almost 30 years in BC. What do you want me to, what do you need me to do to attest to that? No, you're not qualified here. That is ridiculous. This is within our own country. We need to fix this to do with credentials. Truckers, they go across province. They have different regulations in every province they have to meet. Why can't we regularize that sort of thing? If we're all interested in highway safety and truck safety, surely we can get together and come up with something we can agree with on regulations. If it comes to investment, there might be somebody who wants to invest in more than one province. Maybe there's a mining interest that has nothing to do with that border between us. These are ways we can cooperate in so many ways. And if we did that, our GDP would go way up just by tearing down interprovincial barriers to our own trade. So it has to do with a continuity of policy. It has to do with cooperation between provinces that want to do what is right by their own citizens, and as well see the value in sharing and cooperation in our regulatory frameworks. I believe we can do this. It's just going to take people who are like-minded, and I believe when I'm premier, we will have that like-mindedness across these provinces to get these things done.
Yeah, and with people, they're like, "How are we going to pay for this?" Well, when you have more economic growth, that's more revenue for the government. So that's how it's paid for. Like we're running all these deficits right now because our economy is not doing that great. So, I mean,
we can be way more efficient in our government, and that's just a fact. When I was in the Harper government in cabinet, we were coming out of the 08-09 recession. I went in 11, and these programs, a lot of them had already started, but I became intricately involved when I went into cabinet, and especially when I was Minister of National Revenue. We had a DRAP program, Debt Reduction Action Plan. And it was a whole of government approach. We had targets. We had to monitor our outcomes. We ended up in 2015, when we left office, we had reduced personal income tax, reduced corporate income tax. We had brought the GST from 7% to 5%. We had brought in income splitting for seniors that they still enjoy. We brought in the first tax-free child care benefits for children to help people with families with kids under 18. We did all that and got back to a balance and surplus. I really believe if I can move teams to do that nationally, that I can move teams to do that in my own province in BC. It can be done. You have to focus. You have to be determined. You have to have, like I say, a whole of government approach. But this idea that you just throw out your hands and say, we've all heard the expression, the problem with socialism is sooner or later you run out of other people's money to spend. Well, they have officially run out of money. They don't know where to go. That last budget was the no hope budget that I call it. dreadful, offered no solutions and answers. All they've been doing is shutting down core services that are strained already and no options. That is not hope. That is saying we don't have any answers. So we have answers. We want to put them in place.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually believe you when you say this.
Mhm.
I actually do. I think that you will be able to get it done for British Columbia and the rest of Canada. So you provide me with hope, and I'm sure other people out there see it as well. You have the experience, and you have the right mindset, and I could see other provinces working with you, for sure. Let's talk about DRIPA quickly. I'm, as a BC resident, I have my home, and we find out there was a backroom deal signing off, all of Greater Vancouver, 2 million properties. People are really concerned about this. I believe that if you're granted fee simple, that's forever. Like, done. That's it. You got fee simple. It's over. So there should be no question. So what does a KLF government look like when it comes to protecting property rights forever?
Well, first of all, you're right to be concerned. It is a very serious issue. It certainly gained a lot of attention with the Cowichan decision because that is a BC Supreme Court decision. I have a trial lawyer and law background. And the thing that struck me most, I would say, from a legal/political viewpoint with that decision was the judge's statement that neither the federal government nor the provincial government presented any evidence nor presented any argument on the supremacy of the Land Title Act or system here in BC. So I looked it up. We've had the land title system that we enjoy, this torn system, as you mentioned, fee simple, we call it, ownership, since 1861. Our current act is the Land Titles Act of 1979. And if you are lucky enough to own property, and that's a big if these days because of affordability issues, you're told that this deed that you have with your name on it, that means it's yours. You have full use and enjoyment of your property, subject to zoning and other kind of regulations. You can build on it. You can tear down and build again. You can renovate. It's yours. You can hang a picture on the wall, and the tenant next door isn't saying you're making too much noise. That's one of the joys of having home ownership is we talked about sovereignty. You have a little bit of sovereignty in your own world, in your own life, in your own family, and that's why people seek it. They also seek it because it is one of the very last vestiges in our Canadian tax system where we are not charged capital gains when we go to sell. Now, that means we have to suffer the loss too. You can't write off losses. But if there is a gain, you're allowed to keep it. So there are a lot of people who scrape everything together to pay down mortgages, work hard to gain equity, because at some point it becomes, of course, their major asset, but also their major investment for the future or their senior years. If you disturb that, if you take that and say, well, that's not really what we meant. We said it was yours, but it's not really. And now we have a new term called co-governance. Co-governance is very ill-defined, if really defined much at all. We never heard about this a year ago, and now we're talking about co-governance. What does that mean? And there was a point in my law career where I was heavily involved on the litigation team in a dispute with the Musqueam band and the non-Indigenous leaseholders on their land on what would be a fair payment per year. There was a big lump sum at the beginning of the leasehold. It was one of the first Aboriginal leaseholds in Canada. Since then, they've basically all gone to prepaid because of market uncertainty with something that isn't fully prepaid. So this was a lease that was mostly prepaid, but then had a yearly amount. We went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. The non-Indigenous leaseholders won that case in the Supreme Court of Canada. I was part of that. It became, unfortunately, too big a part of my life for a while. I also acted for leaseholders up in Kelowna. There was a development at Duck Lake, and they lost their leases entirely. The owner of that land, if you want to use that term, the certificate of possession holder, had persuaded the federal government to cancel their leases entirely. It took us 2 years to negotiate that. I had 150 clients, and we did renegotiate. I can't, it's just too much detail to go into, but the point is, we fought, we won. I have fought these fights. In my law practice for a while, it was 50% of my practice. I understand when you have a new Aboriginal governance that is not well defined, it creates uncertainty. In the Musqueam situation, appraisers stopped appraising on the properties. They said, we cannot give a fair market value anymore. Also, they had changed the taxing authority from the city of Vancouver to Musqueam. Then they changed the BC Assessment Act. This is what governments have the power to do. And in the new BC Assessment Act, they said any leasehold property will now be valued as though it were fee simple or freehold off reserve, which means that, as you know, with the increase in value in Vancouver, city of Vancouver, well, that meant your property taxes went up and up and up, while your market value was going down, 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 to a point where there was no market value at all. You couldn't sell, you couldn't remortgage, you couldn't refinance. People there went bankrupt. Some people, had to go, they were seniors. We had 30% seniors are retired. They had to go into an inferior elder care because they couldn't get any equity out of their house to help pay for things. It was a very rough time. So I've lived it, I've litigated it, I understand it, and I understand how damaging it can be. Your deed has your name on it, but what it really represents is equity, and this can be a confiscation of assets. So when the government or any Aboriginal or Indigenous group says, well, we're not after your deed. No, they're not going to come and try and take your paper away. But what they can do and have the ability to do is severely reduce or eliminate the equity in your property holding. This is scary. I did a lot of family law. I've read more financial statements of regular British Columbians than most people. I did it over many years. And the average British Columbian family, if they're lucky enough to own a home, is by far their greatest asset. They don't have a lot of savings. They don't have big RSPs. They don't work for the government, so they don't have a pension. They are just basically going paycheck to paycheck, trying to pay their mortgage, get their kids to school, pay for that field trip, have a car or two in the driveway if they're able. That's where their money is. And to say that all that hard work of paying down your mortgage is going to amount to nothing is very scary. I heard this through the whole province. So we have pledged, and I personally have pledged, that we would repeal DRIPA. And by the way, all the other 4 candidates in this race said the same thing. This isn't radical ideology from me. It's the NDP who are radical ideologists. They're the extremists.
Yeah, no. So I mean, does the NDP not know that, what they're doing is going to result in absolutely zero value for people? And I think that many British Columbians don't even know this fact.
There's no way the NDP could not know, which means that they don't care, that is not a priority for them. That's what it means.
That's scary.
And that means that they are putting ideology ahead of the citizens. What do you elect people to do? You elect them to be your voice. You mentioned that at the beginning. You elect them to be your representative. We can't all pile into the legislature in Victoria. We have other jobs to do, and you choose a certain few to go in and do that for you. But if they're no longer speaking either for you or for your benefit, as I said at the outset, who is their master? Who are they serving? Some elitist global concept of turning BC into a park? I don't know exactly, but I do know that it's not for the average British Columbian. Do you remember when David Eby said a couple years ago, we should no longer call ourselves British Columbian because it would offend someone?
Yeah, I do. I do
Yeah.
remember that. I couldn't believe it.
I immediately went on my platforms in my small little protest way and put British Columbian on my profiles and things because I am a British Columbian. I was born a British Columbian. I was raised in this province, and I'm proud of that. I believe Indigenous history should be respected, but I believe our collective history should also be respected. I believe our school children should learn about all the glorious things in our history as well as our mistakes. Instead of this idea that there's people who are victims and they're a small minority and the rest of us have victimized them, it is actually not the truth. So public policy is being decided on something that is counterproductive. We need to live together. We need to work together. We already do. So why not promote the opportunity and the cooperation, not this idea that you're dividing people by race or any other measure? I don't agree with that. I think we all should have opportunity, all of us. And I intend to govern for all British Columbians, not a select few. Because if you do this, then this government picks that select small group, and that government picks that select small group. And are you in it or are you out of it? And how does it work? I've heard Eby and his cabinet, I've heard their rhetoric against me. And they say things like, I'm divisive and I'm racist. No, it is the opposite. They are. They are the extremists. They are dividing us by race. They are dividing us by economic stratas. They are dividing us along, haves and have-nots, and they want to be the ones to choose who gets to be in which category. I choose freedom. It's
Yeah.
as simple
Freedom.
as that.
Oh, you speak my language. That's all they have. That's all they have. That's the only thing they have is to attack. And basically, it's basically projecting. I see it as projecting. This is a perfect time to pivot. I've noticed that they're attacking you. Like mainstream media
A lot.
has focused their attention on you. And what's really interesting to me watching this is when I see something in the media, I think to myself right away, they don't know you at all.
Yeah.
Like they just don't know you at all because you're not what they paint you to be. So my question is, did you watch the Elon Musk interview with the leftist reporter that was a few days ago?
I've had it, excuse me, I've had it described to me, but I have not seen it myself. No.
Yeah, you should definitely take a look at that interview because I think it was a masterclass responses by Elon Musk. He was called a far right extremist, and he went to return. He said, "Stronger borders, lower taxes, lower crime rate. How is that far right? Please explain yourself."
Exactly. And they are trying to define that. And frankly, I don't see it as far right at all. I see this as, and perhaps the Overton window has shifted, but I see that as mainstream thinking. I think we're mainstream. I do not see anything that I have said or any policies I put forward as either radical or extreme, and certainly not divisive, because I'm talking about bringing people together. And I agree with stronger border controls. I agree with stronger rules around immigration. I think our province should have more control over where we want to bring people in for skill gaps and whatever it is we need to accomplish. We need to not be so beholden to a federal government that I was part of, but is very far away from us here. And frankly, do not often listen to us because we're not strong enough in our own sovereignty, in our own convictions, so they don't take us seriously. They should take us seriously. It is important that they do. And I've been outlining some of the ways I think we will accomplish that. But he's absolutely right about that. What is radical about saying that you want safer streets and communities? What is radical about saying that looking at all the drug addicted and mental illness displayed out on our streets, that we need to provide institutionalized care and try and get some of our people who are suffering from substance abuse, back to their loved ones drug free? What's wrong with giving them mental health support that so many people need? What is wrong with us saying seniors have built our country and our province? We owe them something. They should be able to have a standard of care in their elder years commensurate with a modern first world country. Not my 91-year-old mother-in-law waited in emergency the other night for 16 hours before anyone even saw her. She's 91.
Unbelievable. Kerry Lynn, I just have to say, don't let the media bother you. Just be you. You're fantastic.
Thank you.
Stay true to your core, your vision. We're going to all support you. We see right through the media. We see that you have a good heart. You, like you said, you're not scripted. You just speak from the heart and you want the best intentions for people. And we're going to back you 100%. You are the change that British Columbia needs right now. Let's quickly pivot to some of the questions that my audience has. I'm going to read a few of them so that you could kind of, so we could get a few, and you kind of touched on it on our emergency rooms. People, my audience has said in the questions were like, we're experiencing long wait times. Our hospital system's basically failing us in British Columbia. We can't find family doctors. So what is the Kerry Lynne Findlay government going to do to fix this? And also, this question's me, is what's your thought on Bonnie Henry? And, are you going to replace her if you become, if you form government? And if yes, do you know Charles Hoff? I think that he's a Canadian hero. And have you heard about him?
I have heard about him. And as to our healthcare, look, first of all, I would not have taken government control of our healthcare professions. I will repeal the new provisions in the Healthcare Professions Act, as I would repeal in the Legal Professions Act. I don't believe that government has ever shown superior competence in actually running any organization. This new changes to the Healthcare Professions Act means that there's doctors, well-qualified doctors and specialists, who have told me they did not renew their licenses. Others have told me they've already left, packed up, and gone to other jurisdictions because they are not free to speak their mind, because they're not free to practice medicine the way they should be able to. So at a time when we desperately need good doctors and nurses, the NDP has pushed them out of our province. It doesn't make any kind of sense. Secondly, I would bring all the nurses back who were told if they didn't have the 2 COVID shots, they couldn't be nurses here.
Nice. Good.
Now, they may have gone on to other things, but I would say you are welcome to come back. This sleight of hand where they said, oh, you can come back, but only if you still have your 2 vaccines, to the people who didn't feel they should have them. I mean, it is a sleight of hand. It's misinformation, most disingenuous from a government. It's not a government that is patient focused in their care governance. They're not doing what is right by the people who need them most. The other thing is we're far too heavily bureaucratized in our healthcare system. We don't need more administrators. We don't need more managers with 6 figure salaries. We need more healthcare people. We need doctors and nurses and occupational therapists and physiotherapists and speech pathologists and all the kinds of healthcare that we all need from time to time. And this is not a welcoming place for them at the moment. It simply isn't. I would turn that around. I also believe, and I mentioned it, touched on it earlier, about credentials. We need to be able to recognize credentials from other places. I often talk about my GP and then I go to see him and I say, I've been talking about you again, because he did his medical training in Nigeria and he's a very good GP. And then he went to the UK for a year or two to take some specialized training. So they treated him as coming from the UK, not from Nigeria. But the fact is, he's an excellent doctor, and that is where his training is from. So, we have to do way better in giving standardizing tests for our healthcare professionals and others who are trained outside of British Columbia if they want to come here and be part of our system. But it's a barrier right now. There's many things we can do to get back to patient-focused care. Also, if I might just say, if you get back to any kind of fiscal balance or sanity, you're not going to stop construction of new hospitals. Your emergency wards can open up again. You're not going to be turning women away. I've heard so many stories, and I'm a mother, of women about to give birth who've been turned away because the maternity ward is either closed down or temporarily or long term, and they're told go 3 hours to another hospital. Or in one case, I was told she was sent home and had the baby on the kitchen floor, to the great distress of herself and her mother and her husband. This is not the way it should be, and it's unacceptable in our system. We are going to have to look at some things like private delivery, because there are people who do benefit from some private delivery. We're going to have to look at the models around the world that work, but it certainly starts with the system we have, making it more efficient, more patient-focused, and more just that it works, more functional, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, when we turn our economy around, we're going to be able to have more money and invest in things. And if we also
That's right.
look at standardizing different things, just the whole package in general, we could do a lot better. I mean, right now it's not working. We got to change it up. We got to change things. And
if it doesn't work, then let's do it differently and let's fix it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not working. Let's change it. So I have another question. What's your stance on firearms? Is it similar to Alberta and Saskatchewan?
It is. I would resist the federal firearms grab. It's overly bureaucratic. It's overly expensive, and you're not targeting the right people. I was the parliamentary secretary to justice when we brought in an omnibus justice reform bill back in 2011-12 into early 13, and we targeted violent repeat offenders. If we had those laws today, at the time, violent crime went down, I believe it was around 38%. If they had kept those laws on the books, it would probably be even lower. Instead, we have this proliferation of violent repeat offenders. We all hear about it. You get in your car, you turn on the radio, a police officer's been killed or an innocent bystander's been killed, and it's often someone who is on release from another violent crime. This is ridiculous. Here in the province, we can do some things. Ujjal Dosanjh and a previous NDP government changed the threshold for charges here from a reasonable likelihood of conviction to a substantial likelihood of conviction. So it is harder to get charged in BC than in most other jurisdictions in the country. We also allow police officers in other provinces to lay charges. We don't here. It's all Crown Council, and it's all done with this higher threshold. Why? This is not keeping our streets safe. It is not making people feel that communities are protected. I live in Surrey, South Surrey, and we have an extortion problem in Surrey, Abbotsford, Langley, up north around Fort St. John. These are violent crimes. They are very scary, actually. And there's whole families under threat. And it takes tremendous police resources to deal with these people. A lot of them are foreign nationals. Why are we not doing the necessary checks to stop people from coming in here, pretending to be visitors or tourists, and then being paid to shoot up businesses and hurt our citizens? It's unacceptable.
No, yeah. I mean, there needs to be consequences for criminal
And
activity.
you don't go after law-abiding gun owners to do that. You go
No.
after criminals and people who smuggle guns up from the States and rub the serial numbers off. That's who you go after. You inspect more containers coming over the border. You don't go after hunters and farmers.
No, I just look forward to a common sense government coming in. You know, when you speak my language, I mean, we need to do things differently. The crime in British Columbia, I often say I feel safer in other countries like Mexico. I recently went to Vietnam. I felt very safe at night there. Sometimes I don't feel safe during the day in Burnaby or Vancouver when I'm walking around. There's people yelling, and I mean, you know, you don't see the problems in other countries like you see in British Columbia, and we normalize this. It's not normal, guys. This is not normal. We're not doing things right. So just one more.
I think that's a very good point. We've gotten too used to the dysfunction.
Yeah.
And people start to lack an understanding that there are options. And if we did it differently, we'd have different results. And this is where hope comes. You have to show people that there are alternatives.
No, it exists. I was just in Vietnam, and I didn't see one person hunched over using anything. There was no homeless people. It's a high trust society. And, you know, they earn a significant less amount of money. There's no excuse why Canada can't be the safest place on planet Earth. Just look at other countries. It's completely different. So we could do better and strive to do better. And one of the ways we do that is to acknowledge the problem and do something different. So I completely agree. So one more thing, and then I apologize to all my audience. I know I didn't cover all of your questions today, but leave more questions in the comment section. I'm going to try to have Kerry Lynne back on the show. Hopefully next time that we see each other in person. I know that we had some scheduling things with a video camera recorder, so hopefully we could do an in-person. I would love to do that in person.
Sure, I would like that. That'd be great.
So leave your comment, everybody, because I will not worry. I will save it so that next time that I speak to Kerry Lynne, I'm going to bring it forwards. The last comment is right now we're in summer. There's lots of fires. Do you know the situation on water bombers for BC? Do we have enough? What's going on with these water bombers? And will Kerry Lynne Findlay government really put more resources into fire prevention? The NDP hasn't been preventing anything. They think that leaving dead wood in the forest is, you know, let nature be nature, when we all know that causes these tinderbox situations and the problems. We didn't have these problems before.
Well, one of the things I object to is that they call all the fires wildfires. Well, you know, if lightning strikes and there's a fire, that is truly a wildfire. If an eco-terrorist lights the fire, that's not a wildfire. If a spark from their barbecue in their backyard leaps over and gets in and it starts to go out of control, I guess that's a wildfire, but it's caused through negligence. I think all of the people who like to enjoy nature and are out in our gorgeous environment, meaning, you know, parks and beaches and everything else, we all understand we have to be careful, but mistakes happen. The first part of what you said, though, is so crucial. What is our forest management? Where is the sweeping of the forest floor? Where are the controlled burns so that when a burn happens, you have corridors where the flames can't leap over to the next set? This idea that no matter the cause of the fire, even if it's deliberately set, that you still call it a wildfire, and your lack of forest management is, if not the most significant factor, certainly a huge factor in the ability to control it. This is negligence and malfeasance on the part of government. People put their lives on the line to fight forest fires. You have a lot of volunteer forest fires and formally trained and professional forest fighters, firefighters, sorry, in at work. And they go out and literally put their lives on the line. This is very dangerous circumstances. And we do lose some. We have lost firefighters trying to save lives. And to me, it is gross negligence to just leave the forest and not do what is necessary. And even take opportunities. When the pine beetle infestation went through, and that dries out the tree. But there's a point in time, it doesn't dry out right away. And there were markets for that. There were forest companies that told me that we offered money to the government to let us harvest those before they completely dried out, because there were some secondary markets for that. And they were ignored. They just let them completely dry out, all this timber. And of course, if a fire comes, it goes up like, a dried up Christmas tree after Christmas. We've all seen what that does. It goes up like a Roman candle, so to speak. This is negligence, and it affects property and it affects lives. I think it is shameful. So a Findlay government would start with proper forest management, and then when it comes to having to fight the inevitable forest fires that we do have, obviously we need to equip people in every way possible and take help that's offered, by the way, by other jurisdictions sometimes that we don't even take them up on. So do they really want to control these, or do they want to be able to say, it's climate change, it's the environment, what can we do? Oh dear. And then put people's property and lives in danger. That is not moral, frankly, and it is also not prudent from a governance point of view.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We could do a lot better. And it's refreshing to hear that forest management is on your eyesight. All right, we're going to end this thing, but I just want to say, for all the British Columbians that are watching today, who now have hope because they saw the real you, they see you, and they could listen to all the great things that you have planned for this province, and they're just so frustrated right now.
Yeah,
I want to tell those people that they need to step up. People, you cannot win alone. You need volunteers to help. So what can you tell the people that are watching this episode? What can you tell them? What can they do right now to actually help you? Is there, are you raising funds right now? Do you need volunteers? What can they do to help you today, right now?
Mark, I really appreciate that, because at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. No one person, no one team can do this alone. It needs British Columbians. Basically, we can change our lives here by voting. That's the truth. We can change our lives by voting. And in order to get to that point where an election is called and we win that vote, yes, we need donations. We need volunteer support. That can be done through the Conservative Party of BC website. You can donate through there. You can get tax receipts for that. You can volunteer your time. You can go to your local MLA if they're Conservative and say, how can I help you? Is there something I can do now? We're starting already to work on election readiness, because you always have to be ready for an election call, which you don't control. And I don't know when that election will be. So what I would say is express your support online. It's another thing. If you watch an interview like this with a great interviewer like Mark, amplify it, put it out there, send it around, let everyone know. Take something away from it and say, you know, he said this or she said that, and I agree with that. And you know, get that conversation going. Word of mouth is probably the strongest seller of any brand there is. And I certainly have appreciated Mark and independent media in amplifying my message as I've gone along. I appreciate this opportunity today, but I want an army of people to say, we've had enough. We're going to do it differently. We're going to start today. We're going to talk about it. We're going to, if we have a few bucks, we're going to put them forward. But time is something everyone can give even a little bit of, and I ask you to do it. I welcome it. I thank you from the bottom of my heart because I love this province, and if you love it too, you can be part of the change that needs to come.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I do my content because I believe in freedom, and I also believe like one person can make a difference.
Yeah.
You could make a difference out there.
Absolutely.
Like I decided to create these videos and it's highly successful because I don't have an agenda. I'm just somebody that cares about my province and I want change. I mean, we could have a lot better in this province. You know what? I completely forgot about one of my number one questions for you. I was like, oh man, are you like, I'm really looking forward to you being in the BC legislature and taking on David Eby's. That will be something that I think it would be really powerful for you to be there and voice and have that strong voice there. So have you given thought of getting a seat, or, you know, what's the plan for that?
I've definitely given it thought. I want to be on the floor of the legislature. I want to take the debate to him. That's something I'm really looking forward to doing. And I want to do it as soon as possible. It's not a simple matter when you don't already have a seat, and 4 of the 5 candidates did not. So basically we had an 80% chance of being in this situation, and here we are. And it takes a bit of a combination of somebody willing to step back for a little bit, and for me to be able to go forward in a seat that makes sense. So we're having those dialogues right now. I'm more than happy to let you know as soon as I know where it'll be, but I am supercharged to do it.
Okay, I'm going to be asking you again because I look forward to that day, and then I'll let everybody know because I'm sure everybody out there is really excited for that moment. So thank you so much for coming on the show, and we're rooting for you. We really like you, and we look forward to the change that you're going to deliver for British Columbia.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.